My name is Marlene Joyce, and I'm originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I first came to Waco in September of 1994. I was living in Columbia, South Carolina at the time, and I came here alone. I didn't know anyone. I went out to Mount Carmel. The only person out there was Amo Roden. She didn't give me any problem or anything. There was still a fence around it. It still looked very much like it did in 1993. And I stayed here for 4 days, and I went to the Waco Tribune-Herald. They were the ones that gave me Sheila Martin's address, and I went to the library. At the time it was 94. I went to the microfiche machines, I went to the copy machines, and looked up everything I could on Waco at the time. And when I got back home, I wrote Sheila Martin a letter, and she wrote me back and said that she was traveling in May of 95 to the East Coast, and could she stop by and see me. And I thought that would be great, so that's when she came and visited me for the first time. And as for what made me so riveted, I guess you could say, for so many years with this, is because it goes back to my own past. When I was in my 20s, my husband and I were, I guess you could call it, part of the Jesus movement of the baby boomers in the early 70s. You can tell by the records, by the songs at that time, that my generation had a big spiritual awakening at the time. And my husband and I studied the book of Revelation and the Old Testament more than we actually studied the Gospels or anything like that, the New Testament. And the things that he showed me from the Bible were things that I didn't even know were in there. And so I learned a lot about what, almost the same thing that David Koresh was teaching. So when I saw what was going on television at the beginning of the siege, and the little bits and pieces started getting out in the news about what David was teaching about the 7 seals, I'd already known what that was because of my husband, and us studying it in the 70s. And so when I did get a hold of Sheila, and when she did come to visit me, we talked about that. And we became very good friends. And through her, I met other survivors like Clive Doyle and Catherine Madison, and they became my very, very good friends. And I also wrote some of the guys in prison at the time, and I just became very, very close with just about all of them. I found them to be some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life.
What are some of your recollections of the surviving Branch Davidians, those that you have known?
Well, Catherine, she was quite a character. She was 93 when she died, and I met her in 1997, and I liked her. She was feisty. She was just really what I would call a cool old lady. She was just really something. Sheila's quiet. She's just a nice person, very gentle person. And Clive is from Australia, and he's got the best dry sense of humor I think I've ever seen on anyone. They're just extremely nice people. The people that I wrote to in prison, Livingston, Paul, Jamie, they gave me an insight into things that I still remember to this day, what they taught me too. So I've learned a lot from them, and I hope I continue to learn.
And so you've studied the Branch Davidian theology?
Yeah, even though I was not a Seventh-day Adventist. Actually, back in the 20s, my husband and I were kind of affiliated with Herbert Armstrong's church. And he had a lot of, he wasn't Seventh-day Adventist, but he kept the Seventh-day Sabbath, and he had a lot of ideas that were kind of like what David was teaching. Enough that I could pick up David Koresh's message and understand it more thoroughly, I think. But we got out of that when we thought that he was going too much toward British Israelism, which neither me or my husband wanted any part of that. Yep.
Is there anything else you'd like to say? Any other comments? that you'd like to make?
Oh, just that I hope that people really realize that the Branch Davidians are, it's not a cult. It never was a cult to begin with. It started from an offshoot of the Seventh-day Adventist Church that goes back to the 1930s, which is years before David Koresh was even born. And the demonization of these people was so wrong by the media. And that's really what I'd like to say.
Thank you.
Welcome.